Does the fighting include U.S. ground forces?
No, absolutely not.
So it's airstrikes only?
Well, not even that necessarily.
You would be
I would not support any action unless there was a very clear understanding of what Maliki would or wouldn't do, who was running the Army, and what third parties were going to be involved.
Folks, and as we mentioned, the president still reviewing options over a week later, meeting with members of Congress, congressional leaders to discuss some of those options. Whether or not anything will be done remains to be seen. Joining us now, though, as I promised, I'm happy to say, is Bernard Kerik, former New York City Police Commissioner and former interim Minister of Interior in Iraq. And great to see you, sir.
Steve, thank you.
Great to see you. All right, so when you look at what's going on in a country that you helped, stabilize to a great extent during your time there, what goes through your mind?
It's a mess. It's a mess, and I don't think there's any pulling out of it at this case. I don't think there's nothing really that anybody can do at this stage in the game, especially in the United States. I think President Obama is really dependent on Maliki. I think his support for Maliki over the last several years, sort of an unconditional support, has not been good for us, not been good for Iraq. And it's going to be extremely difficult to deal with this situation.
When we failed to get a SOFA, with the status of force agreement with Iraq and keep troops there, was this inevitable where we are now?
I think it was, and look, go back in history. Listen to the people, to the experts that have talked about this for years. They said this would come to this, it would implode, and that's basically what's happening. And this goes back, so somebody asked me this morning, how far back is it? I think there were mistakes made in the Bush administration. When I was there and they disbanded the entire military, I think it was a mistake. I said it then, I say it today. The de-Baathification was a mistake. Unconditional support from Maliki, big mistake. There's a lot of blame to go around, but I think at this point it's going to be a continued problem.
There are some who say that, as you do, mistakes were made in the Bush administration. Some who say we never should have gone in. I believe we should have gone in. I don't know that we should have stayed as long as we did. But that aside, the Iraq that Barack Obama was handed, should it have resulted in what we are now seeing today?
No, I think when you look back at the surge was. The surge worked out well. I think General Petraeus did a phenomenal job in getting that accomplished. I think the status forces agreement, the fact that we basically pulled out. It sort of reminds me of policing back in the 80s and 90s when Giuliani came into the city. We would sort of secure an area of the city. Over saturation with cops, aggressive arrest, and do all these things. But then we'd leave a contingent of cops there to make sure that, that things didn't go back to the way they were. And in this situation, I think that was a mistake that we didn't have that agreement, that we didn't keep people on the ground, at least as advisors, at least, for intel purposes. Some of this stuff, people are saying now they didn't see it coming. If you didn't see it coming, you're
intelligence problem, right?
A big intelligence problem.
And what about the internal? Because even those who are saying we have to do something are saying ultimately this has to be settled by the Iraqi people. You were there. Talk about the sectarian conflict here.
Listen, it is what it is, and we're not going to solve that issue. Right. The Sunni Shia issue. We're not going to solve that. We're not going to fix that. That's got to be fixed internally. And at some point in time, you're going to have to look at, can there be a segregated Iraq where the Kurds, maintain their own, the Shia, the Sunni.
So you're talking about divisions through different countries, in effect.
Basically, I think they almost have a better chance of doing that than anything else, because as it stands right now today, I don't know if you're following it on social media. The videos are horrendous. The mass murders, the drive-bys on the roads to slaughters in the fields. This is going to continue, and I don't think Maliki has the ability to stop it.
Yeah, and when you talk about Iran now vowing to protect their interests and the Sunni interests in Iraq, that makes it even more of a problem.
Well, it's another added element to the mix, and it's not a good one. So, you know, I don't think the president and I don't think the United States is the end resolve here. I think it's really regional. I think there has to be some agreement between the you know, the Saudis and the Qataris and the Kuwaitis, and you got to get them involved and come in with some covert plan that you know, brings this stuff together, because as it stands right now, I don't think the U.S. can do anything.
So maybe a partition of Iraq. I mean, that in the short term or long term, you see that as an answer?
Well, I think that would, in the minds of those there, that may be the answer. But I think it's regional, and you know, they're going to have to deal with it. I don't think it's at this point. I don't think the president, there's much he can do about it.
When we hear yesterday that we captured finally one of the masterminds of the Benghazi attack, a guy who had done TV interviews, who had been, his whereabouts was not a secret like bin Laden. He was open, he was out there, he was, like I said, doing on CNN, on this station, on that station. Were you surprised that we brought him in, or we got him?
No, I wasn't surprised we brought him in. I think I was a bit surprised it took so long to get him. But, you know, this goes back to intelligence. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know. There's a lot of stuff that is going on out there that we're completely unaware of, you know, that only the intelligence community knows, and you really have to leave it up to those guys to do their job, those men and women to do their job. I'm happy they got him. There'll be others to follow, I'm sure, and you know, he'll be held accountable for what he did. Should
he be in a civilian court where they're going to be bringing him, or should he be tried in a military tribunal?
My personal opinion is I like the military tribunal. I don't like the you know, civilian court.
Treating him like a bank robber, giving him his rights.
You know, I don't agree with that, but that's not my decision at this point. I'm just glad he's here. I'm glad we got him. He's not here yet, but I'm glad we got him, and he's going to be held accountable.
Are they interrogating him on that boat? Is that the purpose of the boat trip?
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a long boat trip, and I'm sure he's going to, you know, they'll do what they can to extract as much intelligence from him as possible. You know, in ways that we can legitimately get information out of them.
Is that a kind of a way around, you know, about the CIA interrogation unit, which was disbanded by Obama criticizing Bush, and now they bring him on this slow boat ride? Is that kind of a way around that, but doing the same thing?
I guess it's up to those guys to make that call. Personally, I don't care how long the ride is. He's in custody now. They're going to do everything they can to get the information out of him that they need to get, and I think it'll be helpful in the end.
I hold up the Newsmax, the magazine, the July edition. Everybody getting a sneak preview right here with Richard Nixon on the cover, and prominently inside the magazine is a great story on Bernard Kerik, crusading for prison reform. Now, you spent some time in prison, and that opened your eyes?
Yeah, I spent 3 years in a federal minimum security camp, and it basically has given me a very unique perspective on the criminal justice system, from what I thought and what I thought I knew to what I realize today. And I think the criminal justice system has enormous flaws and failures. I think the mandatory minimums and sentencing guidelines have to be addressed. I think the collateral cost of a conviction to individuals, to families, is devastating to the U.S. economy. And I think these are things that the American people, even our congressmen, even the Congress itself, who create these laws, I don't think they understand the collateral consequence of what happens within the system. And I'm just trying to enlighten people as to what the realities are, and hopefully they can fix it.
I'd love to have you back and talk more about that in depth as we go along. Thank you so much, sir. Great to see you. Former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik also served as interim Minister of Interior in Iraq. And again, oh, you want me to hold it up again? There it is. There it is. July issue of Newsmax, the magazine. And make sure you get your hands on that. Okay, folks, when we come back, we have so much to discuss with the panel. We'll talk about our conversation conversation that we had with Bernie Kerik. And also Hillary Clinton making the rounds yesterday. 2 important stops, the CNN town hall and, of course, her Fox News interview with Bret Baier and Greta Van Susteren. All coming up on the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.